Welcome to the Kraken Structures rigging bench. Let me first apologize for the audio. I don't have any special microphone. This is just a GoPro, and you can see in the shot I'm watching what I'm doing on my iPhone, and I've been really bad at blocking the shot with my hands. So this is the second time I'm filming this. I need to make it shorter, and I need to stop saying So here we go. This video about synthetic rigging is going to deal with one specific issue, and that is the auxiliary hardware that you use to connect your new synthetic shrouds to your existing chain plates and your existing tangs that are on your mast. This specific hardware is made for sailing vessel Zingaro for James to address some of the problems that he had when he installed his synthetic rigging system. So what you see in front of you is an exact mock-up of James's chain plates. He sent me the dimensions. I made this mock-up. It's regular steel. It's just painted with what's called Dyneema, just to keep it from rusting. There was no need to make this out of stainless. It's just for test fitting stuff. So James's chain plates above deck is 8 centimeters wide, 5 centimeters above deck, and he's got 2 holes that are 3 centimeters on center above deck, and these are 7/16 pins, or about 11 millimeters. So when James published the rigging video, which I'm going to put a link to that down if you haven't watched it yet, but if you're an SV Zingaro fan, you probably already know what I'm talking about. You can check out that when he made the shrouds, put the thimbles in there, and to connect them to the chain plate, he had some eye-strap toggles, but they weren't big enough to go around the new thimbles. So what he did was he pulled off the toggles that were the end pieces of his turnbuckles and seated those into the thimbles. But he had to pry the thimble open at the bottom. And I'll show you with a normal thimble. This is not like the one he used, but it is a regular split thimble. So he had to take a screwdriver and spread this open and get that toggle from the chain plate in there. And what it's doing is I'm going to take this washer to kind of illustrate. Actually, this one's not big enough. Let me grab a bigger one. What the toggle is doing is it's going in there, and let's see if I can get this on camera. It's going in there, and it fits in there, but it touches the edges, and it doesn't nest into the bottom. I keep blocking the shot with my hands. It doesn't nest into the bottom. So it's point loaded on 2 sides, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on the center. And technically speaking, I don't know if the loads would be high enough to do it, but that steel could fold into there. So so we want to address that. So I knew that James needed toggles that had a wider gap in between the 2 legs of the toggle. Here's the problem with buying off-the-shelf toggles. They're already sized to specific wire sizes. James had 1/4 inch wire, so the toggles that he had were sized for 1/4. The gap between the 2 legs was probably less than 1/2 inch, probably about 3/8 is what I'm guessing. That would have fit perfectly over his chain plate. So trying to make it in between, and I'm going to show you, this is a thimble that's basically, this is almost exactly like the one James is using. And actually this particular one he is going to be using because I just sent him a dozen of these. He wanted them. We talked about sourcing them. I have a really good source for these. They're very affordable. And it is not a split thimble. It's a solid investment cast 3/16 thimble. So it's a lot tougher. And surprisingly, it's really not that heavy. It's definitely heavier than these cheesy stamped steel ones that they typically use on wire. But it's definitely solid. So he needs a toggle that is going to go right through here. It's going to fit. He's going to be able to pin it to the chain plate. He's going to be able to put toggles on the upside, on the top of the mast, pin it to the hardware up there, and it's going to work. So without getting too long in the tooth, because I want to make this video short, boom, there's the toggle. This sucker is mean. It's heavy duty. The original toggles were likely 3/16. I could have upsized them to 1/4 inch, which would have matched the chain plates, but I went with 3/8 because I knew that James is getting ready to cross the Pacific. He wants to make Zingaro as bomb-proof as possible. There's a little bit of a weight penalty making a toggle that thick, but I mean, it's really inconsequential, especially when these are down on the deck and they're not up in the rigging. So why is this different from a toggle that you could just buy from Hain? Well, you could buy a Schaefer or a Hain toggle, and first of all, it's going to cost you about $175 to $200 to get it in this size. The biggest problem is you would have a much different pin size. To get a toggle that's 3/8 thick and has a 3/4 inch gap in between the legs, you're going to end up with a pin size that's 1/2 inch, 5/8, maybe even 3/4, when James's pin size is only 7/16. Now you're probably saying, well, why doesn't he just drill out the chain plates and go with a bigger pin size, and then he can use the factory toggles? Well, first of all, like I said, they're $200 a piece. And he needs at least 4 of them. So that's $800 just for toggles. I'll tell you right now, the stainless steel billets that I purchased from my metal supply place only cost $10 for each one of these. Now, don't get it in your head that these things are cheap, because they take a lot of labor to custom make. I mean, a lot. So I don't think I'm really going to be making these too often in the future. I'm only going to make them when I absolutely have to, and I have no other option to get a commercially produced product. But anyway, I made these to a larger dimension, but spec'd them with a 7/16 pinhole. So now what happens is these guys will slide right into here, and like you saw in James's video, he's not going to have to pop the thimble out of the eye of the Dyneema first and then set it and then put it back in. The eye can stay right in the shroud, and then that sucker's just going to go right into there. And you can see how it nests right into the bottom. It'll rock back and forth, it'll move, it'll slide. It's not pinching anything, it's not point loaded anywhere. He's going to have that movement because you want your standing rigging to be able to articulate in 2 dimensions. So you're not putting undue strain in sort of an incorrect angle. So these guys are going to go right here. They're going to pin. These are some pins. This is just basically a stainless steel 7/16 bolt that's been cut down. But these are going to go right in just like that. Now we're going to use some spacers because these suckers are way wider than chain plate. You got a 1/4 inch chain plate and you got 3/4 inch gap between the legs. So we'll use close tolerance stainless steel washers to space those out, because we don't want it all cattywumpus rocking back and forth. But it still will be able to move in this dimension. It'll also be able to move in this dimension. So we're covered on articulation. But that's basically, you know, that's the product. They are not finished yet because they need to be electro-polished. I don't want to get too long in the tooth in this video, but maybe in the comments below, or I'll make another video about working with stainless steel. We'll talk about the grades of stainless steel and why it's absolutely critical that you have your stainless steel either passivated or electro-polished, and those are 2 very, very similar processes. And also why you can't just drill out the holes bigger. Technically you can if you do it correctly, which normally involves replacing your chain plates anyway. But I'll let you know how that is correctly done. But I made 2 sizes of these. That's actually the medium. The initial ones I started out with are much larger. They're only larger by about a 3/4 of an inch to 7/8 of an inch. You can see this one's taller, and you can see by the reflection of the light, this one hasn't been totally polished yet, but not quite done with these. So he really needs 4 of them, 2 on each side. I made 4 of each one of these sizes, so he's going to have some spares. I mean, I wanted to make sure I got these things right. I also made similar tangs, or call them toggles, that go on the upper terminations of the shrouds. Now he doesn't need them for his cap shrouds. Luckily, the tangs for his cap shrouds have a wide enough gap in between them where these thimbles will just slot right in there just fine and pin in, no special hardware needed. But his intermediate shrouds and his backstays, they don't have a double tang, they have a single tang. So we need something that's going to go on the outside of them. I'll turn my hands around, so, you know, like that. So basically, I just modified the design of these to make them more compact and lighter weight, and I came up with this. which essentially this is only 1 inch wide, where these guys are 1.25 inches at the bottom. And then it tapers up here to 5/8. And this sucker comes out at just a shade over 4 ounces, where this one is 9, and this bad boy is 12. These are too heavy to go up into the rigging above the lofted rigging. So these are much lighter weight. So in the intermediate shrouds, this is going to, just like the other ones, it's going to slot perfectly into the 3/8 thimble. And then it's going to go around that tang and pin right through the middle. And we can use spacers to make up the gap, those close tolerant stainless spacers. The backstays that James installed, and I don't want to give anything away because James actually hasn't published that yet, but he does have backstays now. They're not correctly attached right now, so I made a set of the same ones, but only they're just a little bit shorter and a little bit lighter weight, because the masthead is made of aluminum. The tangs off the aft end of the masthead are just a thick aluminum, and then we're going to take one of these and we're going to use the smaller ones. The smaller ones are just ever so slightly shorter than the other ones, so they're as light as possible. And the shroud on the thimble, just the same as everything else, is going to go through. Now what's going to happen is the pin is going to pass through, and then it's going to pass through that aluminum tang. That pin needs to be coated in Tef 45, which is it's a high pressure grease. It is a Teflon based grease, I believe, a PTFE. I'd have to look at the jar, I keep forgetting. But it's a grease that electrically isolates the stainless from the aluminum and prevents bimetal corrosion. But the other thing we want to do also is prevent the tang itself from touching the aluminum. So instead of stainless steel, we're going to use Delrin washers. Delrin is a trade name for an ultra-high molecular weight plastic. A lot of people use nylon washers in their rigging and other places above deck. That is bad. That is real bad. It's a cheap way to go. These are not that expensive. They're definitely more expensive than nylon, but these are actually electrically isolating and they stand up to UV a lot better. So these are white Delrin, and just like I was mentioning before with the stainless steel spacers used down on the chain plates, everything is stainless down there. You don't need to use the Delrin, but up here we want to keep this toggle from touching the aluminum tang. So on the inside, we're going to be placing a couple of these washers that are made of this Delrin acetyl plastic when the pin goes in, and it's going to keep this toggle from basically resting on the aluminum and greatly reduce our risk of bimetal corrosion. So there you have it. Those are the pieces of hardware that are going to go on Zingaro to help adapt his new synthetic rigging to the existing hardware that he has without having to make major changes. So stay tuned for more videos. I'm going to go over the other portions of rigging that I made for Zingaro, the tensioning systems. I will be making future videos about synthetic rigging, about some of the myths, the pros, the cons. You can see there's a lot of stuff on my rigging table here. Samples of heat set Dyneema. This is actually ducks. Everybody knows about that. This is a new Italian manufacturer that has a competitive price point and some particular features. These are Dyneema chafe sleeves in different sizes. You can see the line of thimbles that I have down the bench. The bench is a real mess. I just got through with a marathon. I almost pulled an all-nighter finishing some of the rigging pieces that needed to go to James's friend Steve, who's flying down to Costa Rica from Arizona, and I needed to get that stuff to him so we didn't have to ship it, because shipping to Costa Rica is expensive. These did not get finished on time because the polisher just would have never got them finished in time, so I held off on these and finished the other stuff first. These will get electro-polished and I'll have to ship them down to James. So stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments, good or bad. I'll try to help you guys sort out the myths, the legends, the unknown factors of synthetic rigging. ask me any questions, and hopefully you guys got something out of this. Primarily, I made it for James, and the other videos are going to be about the stuff that's going to go on his boat, and I'm going to demonstrate how it works and what you can do with it. So stay tuned. Give me a thumbs up. You can find me on Facebook. I'm Kraken Structures. You can find me also by searching Sea Monster Strong. So take care. Thanks for the watch, and we'll get back with more videos as soon as we can.